Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Nesler. Appreciate you guys joining us today. Hope everybody is staying safe and healthy. And I'm ready to give you guys another show. We've got a good one that was recorded before, obviously, we all went into lockdown, but I think one that you'll still enjoy. This is a really cool product that you've seen on the wrists of several of the pros that you know and love. It's the Polar fitness watch. And I was intrigued by how is this brand growing in such a competitive, crowded market? You've got, all the other fitness brands out there that so many athletes turn to. How has Polar stepped into our little sport of moto and captured the trust of so many of these pros? So I set out to find the guy, and Jeff Walker, who's a friend of the show and former guest, told me that, hey, you need to talk to Wayne from Polar. So that's exactly what we did. I've come to know Wayne, and he's a very intelligent guy. He's a somewhat new fan to moto in the last handful of years, and he's really doubled down, and he's done an extremely just a really impressive job of building relationships with the people that he needs to in the sport to grow the brand of Polar. So today our guest is Wayne Vartabedian from Polar. Really excited to have him on, and I think you'll find it an interesting conversation and hope you enjoy it. So without further ado, let's dive into our conversation with Wayne Vartabedian from Polar.
Welcome to the Moto Marketing Podcast, presented by RacerX, the podcast for moto industry professionals, entrepreneurs, and riders. If you want to grow your brand and business in today's digital-first world, you have to know how to turn a stranger into a fan, turn a like into a customer. You have to know how to turn attention into dollars. This podcast is dedicated to keeping you in the know on real marketing tactics that work in the moto world so that you grow your business and help grow the sport. Get ready to learn from the very same marketing experts trusted by RacerX, Lucas Oil Pro Motocross, GNCC, and NBC Sports. They'll help you navigate the world of digital marketing for your moto brand. This is the Moto Marketing Podcast. Presented by RacerX.
All right, welcome back to the Moto Marketing Podcast. As promised, we have got somebody that you may or may not know, but somebody that I think is you're really going to enjoy the conversation today. I've enjoyed getting to know him. We're just two moto fans, and he has played a major role in growing a brand that you see on many athletes' wrists. We've got Wayne Vartabedian from Polar on the line with us today. Wayne, man, I am very excited for this episode because there's something special going on at Polar in the moto space, and we're going to talk about it today. So welcome to the show.
Luke, it's great to be on the show. I'm a subscriber to many podcasts, which we'll get into, and when I started seeing moto marketing, the wheels were spinning, and I thought that this would be a nice area to maybe talk about the Polar brand, but am I really part of the industry? Even though we're doing some cool things with riders, I just didn't know if I, would be of that level to be interviewed. And then you sent me an email. And I'm like,
That's
oh my
right.
God,
That's right.
Who's emailing me? So I'm like, I'm not saying I'm on Mount Rushmore, but I do have my own Mount Rushmore of people in the moto industry. But so yeah, man, it's awesome to be on the show. I've been waiting, I've been like Christmas for me.
Well, it was cool to see your excitement when I reached out because I mean, look, I'm nobody special, right? I mean, I own a marketing business. I'm a moto fan. I mean, we work with some really cool clients. But when I reach out to somebody and see their excitement about coming on a show, I mean, look, I don't expect that. And you were super excited. And when I didn't really understand why, and I'm like, why is this guy that runs the moto side of Polar this jacked? And then we get on a call, and I'm like, this guy is a super fan, just like me and Davey Coombs and so many others in the sport. Which I think is why Polar is having a lot of success, is because you're not just a guy over there working for the brand, doing what you're told in the moto space. You're living and breathing this. And the way that we got connected was actually from Jeff Walker, which I just told you before we hit record. His episode so far has been the most popular episode. Jeff and I were talking afterwards, and he's like, you got to talk to my guy Wayne at Polar. And I reached out, and here we are, man. So I'm excited to have you on. Appreciative of your time. And the reason I wanted to have you on today is, I mentioned to you before, look, there's a lot of fitness performance products, watch-based products that you can choose from, cycling-based products that you can choose from. And, the Polar is showing up on the wrists of so many athletes in this space. And I told you that, I have one on that I'm trying out. You were gracious enough to send this over, and I love it. And it's better than, I'll say it. I had the other one on me that starts with a G, and there were things I didn't like about it. And I put this on. I'm like, man, this is a quality product. But how do we beat out some of these giants that are Garmin and the other ones? How are we getting this as like what seems to be the watch of choice for these moto athletes? That's what I want to cover today. So let's start quickly, a little backstory on how did you get, because you're an endurance athlete, I believe, a triathlete, correct?
Right. Jeff, Luke, we'll hit Jeff in a second. None of this is possible if Polar doesn't make the best heart rate monitors for over 40 years. So first and foremost, it's not that we're hooking up riders with free product at that elite level,
right?
Because they wouldn't stand for bad data. So first and foremost,
you got a quality
it's
product.
All about Polar.
Yes,
we got a quality product, but we don't stand like 2 seconds of bad data on a download.
Right.
So yeah, I'm a former triathlete, Ironman, Kona finisher, ran a decent solo marathon, and then use the product before employment. So not only I have, it's a privilege to work for Polar because I used the product prior, and now I'm on the other side of the logo, which is pretty cool. So now I get the resumes, which we can discuss, from the athletes, where I used to send the resumes looking for some product support as an age group athlete, as we do in running and triathlon, where age groupers, not CC, classes. So I was introduced to Alden. By far, I told you I have a little bit of Mount Rushmore of the people who've helped grow the brand. And the first person was Alden, and I came in at the tail end of the Villapoto era. So I did some really cool moments in the history of Supercross with, Ricky and Stewart. And so it's hard for me to play catch up, but I do like some of these podcasts that Mathis has with some older players in the segment. So just from the product of supporting Alden, his riders would get product, and then if they would leave, they never leave the brand. They just leave the Baker's Factory, and then we get our brand in another, color. Someone leaves, KTM, and they go over to Yamaha. Now we have some Blue Crew potential. And, the colors we have also help. It's kind of silly, but colors work. And, this sport, they gravitate to colors. So luckily, Polar makes the majority of the starting grid in colors.
So I think that is what has caught my eye when, I'm watching some of these vlogs that these guys will put out, or it's just an Instagram post, and I don't notice the black wrist strap smartwatch on their wrist. I noticed the bright green, the white, the blue, the red. How much of that, because that's a very guerrilla grassroots marketing technique that is super powerful, knowing that, hey man, this thing's going to show up in a photo way better than just a black or a gray. How much of these the collars is strategy versus, this guy just liked a green band, or hey, we feel that this is going to stand out, so therefore that's why we're sending out collared bands. Is that strategy, or is it just what people are into?
It's 100% strategy. In fact, I have a saying here, I never issue a black watch because at the end of the day, we're just a black watch on a wrist. Mm-hmm. So whether it's supporting the U.S. Olympic cross-country ski team or biathlon, another great sport of action, it's all color, and your sport or the sport of Supercross would not stand for wearing a color that's not on their fender. So right. We've recently discontinued red, so I am always... I jokingly say I dumpster dive around here for samples, and I have a little pile of green and red ones, and I can always find blue that's in production. So it's 100% the color works, and they leave it on, and that's the goal, and it works.
Right. So the technology, let's go there for a minute, and then we'll start talking about how have we become the watch of choice in the sport. So the technology is, it's pretty incredible. It integrates with, I'm a cyclist as well as I ride Moto, but I use training tools and platforms like Training Peaks, which if anybody does structured scheduled training, they're probably familiar with that. Well, what's unique about it is, this tool, when I log a workout on my watch, I get the Training Peaks, and it's already inputted into there. So, you guys are, it's a legit platform. It's a legit tool. And I say platform because it has the app. You can analyze everything from your sleep data. So you've got a high quality product. What do you guys hang your hat on as far as the technology side from a marketing piece? Hey, we want you to know about this. This is what sets Polar apart from the other options that you guys have.
So the biggest difference between us and our competitors is we were born on physiology first, not GPS. So first and foremost with Polar, it will be beneficial features that we validate. No other brand has white papers to validate when we have a feature and someone can challenge us and say, well, you have a nightly recharge. It watches your anatomic nervous system and the sleep data. Like, how can you say that? How can you prove it? Like, yeah, we have white papers that these universities have done studies, and as we were doing sleep data, they would compare it to in a trial with like the brain waves. So Polar would tweak the algorithm to match the gold standard. So if there's a gold standard that we're trying to mimic, then the R&D team will work on the algorithms to make it as close as possible to the whatever features industry standard might be. And now we're the, kind of like the industry standard for, over 40 years. And, people have gone to other brands, and we understand that. There were times where we stayed with external pods, and our competitor went to all-in-one, and Polar, was a little late, and people went to another brand. And then when they didn't get much respect from another brand or support, then someone always knew a guy, and somehow I'm the guy. So
right.
when other brands didn't help out these riders who were supporting them, mm-hmm. then the likely choice was, here's a brand that loves the sport and supports the sport and has no problem continuing it.
Right.
So the physiology element would be we're 24/7. You train with the product, and you get your download, and you can see your activity during the day, which everyone's pretty active as is. And then you sleep with the product. It's a Polar Vantage M or the Polar Vantage V, and it watches your nervous system, because a lot of athletes now will check their morning heart rate with Bluetooth to an app, and it's now the new segment is morning readiness, and it's heart rate variability. And if you have a Bluetooth transmitter, then you can use a third-party apps like Elite HRV are really nice. And when you wake up, it lets you know that you may want to adjust your training because you're not fully recovered. And that's what we finally added, was the morning readiness. So now it will show your sleep habits, but then when you wake up, are you really recovered or are you still stressed? And with the Polar Vantage V, we have the orthostatic test, which takes 4 minutes. And you lay down with the resting heart rate and you stand up, and it watches the trends, and it gives you this feedback. So that completed the whole physiology of wearing the Polar product for 24 hours.
Yeah. Look, it's It works. I'm not a professional level athlete, but I train hard and work out, and I use different products because I'm interested in them. I mean, there's some cool products on the market, and I've used yours now for a couple of weeks, and it's immediately I'm like, man, this is so much more convenient. It's accurate. It works. It's a solid product, so that always helps. Obviously, when building a brand, if it's junk, it's not going to go far before people catch on to that. So you've got a quality product, but how do we start to get this onto the athletes? Was that solely your job, and you came into Polar and you had to learn the space, and and you became a fan from that? And then you obviously talk about Alden Baker and all this. How do we go from it just being a quality product to being a quality product that so many athletes today are using? And I know it's hard to answer that in one question, but what got us started in that on that trajectory?
I think it's, I was never a motorsport in the dirt fan. I was always MotoGP. So like when I was always like aware of Roger back in the day, but I was probably rooting for Kenny Roberts in the MotoGP era. So every year I know a little bit about, I recently learned a few years ago the difference between Supercross and motocross. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know the difference. So here I am, subscribing to probably 5 podcasts, Mathis and Whiskey Throttle and Swap Moto, and Ricky's new one. So I'm doing my best to really stay on top of the sport. And that passion and product availability helps grow the sport. If it was a sport I wasn't interested in, and where the athletes train, and that's the key thing with why the brand works with the sport, is because I had to convince people at Polar that, there was a UFC fighter that people were happy would wear our transmitter, but the fan base doesn't train. But when you click on, a Chad Reed or, a Justin Cooper, and then you click on a comment from a person, most of the time they have a motorcycle. So they want to mimic what the big guys use, the people they watch. So I'm really working with a sport where the fan base are athletes and riders of some level. And so, again, it really started with the introduction with Alden. And I know some of the trainers I work with, I try to limit the use of saying Alden. But it started with Alden and those riders. And as I said, the Swanee Swanee was also on my Mount Rushmore. And, he had an issue with a brand, and they were not as cooperative. And then he happened to be with someone, like you were with Jeff Walker, and somebody, the guy Swanee was with, after his displeasure, said, I have a guy at Polar. And, from that day on, he was using, GoPro and Polar versus something else. So then that starts the, how with that now with Blue Crew. And then the other person who's been wonderful, and I really haven't associated with, people in the sport who I just don't want to work with. Everyone's been great. JH, I'm on the phone with JH, and he's like, is there anything I can do for you? And I'm like, we have this code, MotoX, it's 20% off at Polar, and if you could just push it, but Polar saw like a little spike in December, and they're like, what happened in this date range? And again, we have a specific code, and that's how Polar's embracing the sport. On a side note, I need a sports profile called motocross. We're forcing you guys to use other outdoor or mountain biking, and we're trying to get past that little, berm or hurdle. So then so JH was great when he was working, he works with Austin. So Mathis dropped the code, and then as I'm on the phone with JH, he posts on Ricky's Instagram story and on Austin. And then we got a quick little blip on the radar of Shop Polar sales thanks to the MotoX code. So I'm like, wow, this, and I'm sure Polar that this is the sport we have to focus on to some degree. And then I worked, and then Swanee again was like, can we do anything for you? You support us with product. I'm like, yeah, I've got this image of a blue Polar Vantage M and V. And I said, let me copy GoPro and then Rockstar. Because I know their athletes will post the same image and content on the same day. So, no matter where you go, you're going to see, the new GoPro Hero 7. So I told Swanee on December 26th, let's do this like post-Christmas, maybe you have gift cards, and all you have to do is say Moto X for 20% off, USA only, and, you can get Witty, Blue Crew, gift cards. And then we saw another spike, obviously it was because of that, and we put like 30 more units. So at the end of the month, it was all Moto X code, and I was able to, I'm not keeping analytics, but I could ask our analytics guy, who I bug him a lot because I'm so excited. I want to hear every day, did we sell another Polar with the code? And I think in January we sold exactly 40 units with the code. And that was basically telling Swanee, I don't want Instagram story. I want it on the timeline. So the few times I will actually make it known what I want versus I'm happy with what you give me. So in saying that, I'll reach out to some of the athletes if they post. I make a good job of athlete management, and on I have global status with our Instagram account. So I'm probably one of two people outside of Finland who has that privilege. So I always DM the writers. Great, thank you. Just keep saying thank you. Good luck. And I know the schedule because I'm a fan. I'm fanboy now, and it just seems to work.
So it sounds like the biggest component to your marketing approach is very much influencer, get the product on people that the fans want to be like and train like, and let's let the product do the talking and show it in the wild rather than a bunch of paid media, whether it be print or radio or social. Am I pretty accurate with that, or are you guys doing a lot of other things in addition to your influencer marketing currently?
Well, with regards to Supercross motorsports, it's strictly me and Instagram per se. We have other strategies with other sports and banner ads and other things for running and team sports. We're a pretty diversified company with PE solutions for kids, so we do things in that area. Team sports, our products inside a lot of locker rooms that you never see the product under the jerseys. Right. And,
but in Moto, you don't have.
But in Moto, it's just like, go have at it,
That's great. That blows my mind because I'm expecting you to come on here and be like, yeah, but we do, look, we've got ads in Racer X and all the other magazines. We've got paid social. We've got search, all specifically to Moto. But I'm not necessarily seeing it. But I'm like, he's got to have it. But it's really, you have built and gotten my attention and so many others' attention from what you're doing with just influencer marketing, correct?
100%, man.
It's
I don't
amazing.
even have a degree in marketing. I told you at our previous call, I was a field rep who bounced around internally to fill a few positions, got in marketing, got involved with sponsorship, and now after 17 years, the last few years, I've got the greatest job in the world. I interact with athletes. I mean, I'm watching as well as being a fan. I'm a big winter sports fan, so I'm not the team sports guy. I'm watching NBCSN like everyone else on the Olympic Channel.
Right.
And, just, again, it's all Instagram and email and, being nice and thanking people, being supportive, showing an interest, and, insert marketing term. Organically, it's happening where they feel a little obligated. I'll give you a quick story. We go to MetLife. We're based in Bethpage, New York. So every other year we go to MetLife or we go to Foxborough, and we have options to go to Southwick. So we take it in. And, through the Dungy, Marv era, and Alden, we get hospitality. We were under the awning, and it's super cool to be with the riders. And, I take some cool photos, different perspective of the people waiting online to sign autographs. And they give us the royal treatment, and we look at each other and because in the beginning we were issuing our riders these GPS watches, and they were just smacking them up on the handlebars, and we get all these cracked $250 watches coming back, and the service guys are getting a little annoyed, like, hey, this sport's a little too rough for the product. We got to work this out. So I approach Alden. I'm like, hey, listen, instead of the M400, can we knock you down to the A300? It's not really a budget thing. per se. It's just like you're not utilizing GPS, so why have it on the bars? And Adam's like, mate, whatever you think is best, we'll just take it. So now we knocked them down to like $129 watch, right? And we give them bike computers. But the hospitality far outweighed, what we were giving them. And then Alvin and the team, someone said, you don't understand. This is part of their daily training equipment. You see a $99, $129 watch. We see it as boots, guards, helmet, Polar transmitter. It's the daily data. In fact, we were with Carlos inside the hauler, and when they were getting on, when podcasts were getting on Marvin for having trouble through the whoops, I'm in the KTM hauler with Carlos looking at Marvin's download, and they go, look, his heart rate never moves. So it's not like he has any apprehension, or nerves or fight reaction going when the whoops are coming or after the whoops. His heart rate never changes. Everyone's wrong. Maybe there's some technique, possibly. I don't know. I don't know what to look for. But heart rate-wise, so even that data was important to prove that, no, Marvin's not nervous or anything.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool of the how we had now the hospitality was sort of justified, but was still, it never gets old, but sometimes we're a little uncomfortable with how over the top the sport is, with just being so courteous to us when we go to races.
Yeah, I think stories like that, man, I think they can be told in so many ways. In the fact that you guys have done, I mean, you've built such a popular brand in this niche sport with literally nothing. I mean, just you're giving out. I don't want to say giving. You're exchanging product for exposure with certain athletes. You're doing organic social media management, but you've grown to what it is today in this sport without anything else, which as a professional marketer, like, one might be like, well, isn't that bad? No, it's not. There's so much potential if Polar Global would allow you to do some additional things. Man, when they flip to the 12th page of Racer X and there's a full page spread about really that story that you just told about Marv's heart rate in the magazine, or you do something on social. I mean, there's so much additional opportunity for you guys to do down the road once you guys prove out that, hey, it's worth it. It's very, very intriguing to me from a marketing approach what you've been able to do with growing market share in this sport from literally, I mean, it's how it caught my attention. I saw it on somebody's wrist and I'm like, that's a cool looking watch. I had some quirks about the one I was using that I didn't like, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to look into this. And that's about the time that you and I met, and again, you're gracious enough for me to test it out. I'm like, man, this is cool. Never would have thought of Polar if it weren't for seeing it on the athletes. And I think it's pretty incredible, and it shows the value of social media influence for pros, for amateur athletes. Let's talk about that, because I know you and I have had that conversation. Everybody reaches out. Everybody wants free products. Since you're a kid, that's the coolest thing, man. If I can just get sponsored by this company and they send me free stuff. But you have to understand that it's not, I mean, it's costing somebody money. It's going to cost you. It's got to be a two-way street. So what are you seeing from people reaching out? Do you get a lot of people that understand that, look, I'm here to bring you value. How can I promote the Polar brand in exchange for something in return? Let's talk about that, because I think it can educate some professional athletes, amateur athletes, that how they can position themselves better to bring a brand like Polar value.
So with what you said, that what the writers could be saying about two-way street, I have to tell you, it's hideous. The emails I get from these amateur riders is bad. Like, it's hook me up. Do you sponsor riders? Hook me up. And
oh, gosh.
And I went back to we'll use Jeff Walker, right? I mean, I really don't know his Supercross results. I mean, I look, God bless Steve Mathis, Pulp MX. You guys, anyone who's gotten a free Polar from me, I listen to Privateer Island, and he helps put you on the map. And I want to come back to Mathis, but Jeff sends an email and he elaborates. I know this is like a minimal society with texting and tweeting, but when you email a rep, you can't just say, do you sponsor riders? Can you sponsor me? I may get I'm looking to take my fitness to another level. Can you, again, hook me up, sponsor me, give me. And no one asks for discounts. No one asks for refurbs. There's different levels that we will support riders. The levels are what I made up, because we have another saying at Polar with what's on the back of your baseball card. So Luke, you can maybe relate, and it's like, do you have results to warrant anything free? Or you're not even presenting anything to me as a rep. And then we have to, figure out what's fair product support with discounts or free, and for what the rider does. And with Jeff Walker, who you had on, which was pretty cool, because I think I had interacted with him prior to that, because I certainly did, and it was his YouTube. And now working with Jeff, I'm looking at his YouTube channel. There's no fitness. So why am I doing this? There's no fitness. And his Instagram account, all these guys show whips and they're in the air. Moto images look cool. But, Roxon and those guys, they're showing gym workouts. Chase Sexton did a wonderful post. He's in the gym. Always wear my Polar. Didn't plan on that, but you know what? I'm a fan of Chase, and I interact. And at some point, they do it for free and organically. So for the best advice I could say to a rider, and I think Kiefer did this once on Kiefer Tested, again, another podcast, was just you have to elaborate. Hi, my name is, I ride this. Don't make it a mystery for me.
Yes.
And I get a lot of bogus mystery emails with vagueness, from little hustlers. And I'm like, I kind of know what Loretta Lynn's is by now, and, I know how to look at some results, and you don't want me to do too much investigating.
Right.
And at the end of the day, another thing would be, I love your brand. And it's like, yeah, I love the Porsche brand, but that doesn't mean I'm getting one. So
that's a great.
So I think the riders could just click on the website, be aware. Don't ask for the top model. It's insulting. So just, be considerate of who you are, what level you are, what are your plans for the next upcoming season, maybe some current results. What can you do for a company? And, again, you're not looking for everyone to have a Chad Reed 900,000 person following, who was gracious enough to leave something on his timeline, but I knew what I was doing with that gift. I sent him an image. I sent him a new watch because he's been a Polar supporter for years. And I'm like, we have a pretty cool model, black and copper, and we make a female. So I actually sent Chad with 2 Post-its, and I wrote Mr. Tutu and Mrs. Tutu. And that was just a little hey, man, here's something for your wife. And he throws on his Instagram account. So, again, that's what the writer should do. Stop with the 2-sentence emails, please. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's if you're listening to this, you should have already listened to the Jason Wygant episode, and that's something that he brings up is look, whether you're trying to get a job or you're trying to get a sponsorship, you can't make it me. It needs to be, hey, how can I bring you value? In this little section that we're talking about right now, it's definitely more for the riders, more for the athletes, because there is so much opportunity that's being missed out on. If even 30% more of the amateurs or pros out there were doing what Seven Deuce Deuce is doing, what AJ Catanzaro is doing, what Jeff Walker's doing, what Dio, an average guy that has a day job and rides on the weekend, if more athletes saw the potential of how they could help brands, and hey, you can get some pretty cool stuff in return as a brand, you've got so much more potential to get your message out there way more effectively than television commercials, way more effectively than so many other options that are out there, because these athletes, amateur or pro, have a following and they're creating content that is moving product. But it starts with exactly what you're talking about. It can't be, hey, do you give free product? Hook me up. It needs to be, hey, I got 14,000 followers. I'm a C-level rider at best, but here's the thing. I've got a lot of engagement. I'm training really hard. I'm trying to lose 40 pounds this off season. I'd love to be able to showcase how I utilize the heart rate and my sleep recovery, and I know Polar makes a great product. Is there a way that I can bring you enough value to see, maybe I can get some type of refurb model, whatever it is? Is there anything we could work out that brings you value and helps me reach my goal? Would that be more of an email that would make sense?
100%.
Yeah. And it's easy.
You're right. Hey, one other thing, I want to just go back and before
please.
we wrap this up.
No, you're good. Please.
So I mentioned, I listen to all these podcasts, and it's all I listen to. I listen to less triathlon endurance podcasts. But as I said earlier, with Pulp MX and Mathis, and there's a hard line drawn in the sand. People who like him, people who don't. I mean, I can't get enough content. But what he does for the privateers, and he makes you aware of them. Now that when I'm watching news, like I'll see like a Chris Howell. Like I shouldn't even know his name,
Yeah.
But like I've interacted with him. I'm like, come on, Chris. And I barely ran maybe like A1 or 2 or whatever. Like he made it like on the last lap. Like I know what that red line means.
Mm-hmm.
But even during the mains, like I'm looking down at 17th, 20th place.
Because you know who these guys are now.
And now I know who they are.
Yeah.
You guys, Jerry Robin, who AJ, any one of you who've gotten like a unit from me, you probably wouldn't have gotten it if it wasn't for Mathis. Because with Pulp MX Fantasy, I don't even play it. But here's another thing. I approached Steve, and I'm like, I don't have any sponsorship money. Like I can't even sponsor the podcast. I don't even know how much it costs because I wouldn't even entertain the thought. Can I help out with Pulp MX Fantasy gifts? Because I went to his list, and the 1 or 2 gifts were like a little, I'll use this term, janky. I'm like, boy, if I could just give transmitters, I'm priced better than that gift.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it was like, you know what? And it wasn't like Steve, wasn't paid to play for everything. I'm sure, he has to get paid to play with sponsors, right? But in some areas, he's like super gracious. So I'm like, if we give away, a transmitter, our Polar H10 for you guys out there, it records a session. So you can go to your Polar Beat app, launch the training session, leave the watch and a phone somewhere safe, and go Moto for 20 or 30 minutes, come back, and the transmitter downloads to the phone. So Steve was gracious enough. I'm like, yeah, I could find 18. I got a little bit of sample budget that I can send a few to Dan Truman, who does all the shipping. And that was really cool. And then we lucked out. This is how we grow the brand. We got involved with Fantasy, and then he had 17 gifts, and the last 2 were me and someone else, I think BTO Sports gift card, and they were the random prizes. So now, instead of being one of 15 that never get mentioned, for like 17 rounds of Supercross, I think it's 17, we will mention every podcast as a random gift. So that was just total shock that our brand got mentioned 17 times. And then again, 400, I donated 4 watches for RV and Adam and Jake and Coke Weimer. They're still
Right.
talking about that.
Right. Exactly.
know?
Exactly. Yeah.
so,
Literally this past week, I know that show got brought up.
That show got brought up, and then Phil
Yeah.
Nicoletti, Filthy Phil, was on, and they were busting his chops about the Polar watch. I'm like, wow, this gift keeps on giving.
Yes.
So part of it is like strategically trying to get your product used somehow without asking the world, or maybe no logo placement. And again, like for the resumes, like the sticker on a visor doesn't work. Like I'll wear your sticker on my helmet. Like, but who are you? It's the other stuff we want, not the sticker logo placement.
Yes, I think for the brands listening, whether you're a large brand that just hasn't tapped into influencer marketing, or whether you're one of the small brands that's reached out to me and asked advice, I think listening to what Wayne has shared with us on this podcast, there's a lot of valuable information in there on how to go from nothing in a sport to being a very well-known name. But you can't just you can't be as bad as the riders are with reaching out to a brand saying, hook me up. You can't flip it around and be really bad about just giving your stuff out to just anybody. If you're going to demo product, if you're going to promo product, make sure that the person, that the athlete, whether they're amateur or pro, understands what's expected of them in return for you hooking them up with it. If you play those cards right, and in reaching out to shows like Pulp MX or this show or any of the shows on Racer X, and if you don't have a budget, it's all right. That's not the end of the world. If it's a show that has exposure and you can bring them something that's valuable, man, you've proven that. Look what you've been able to do with Pulp and then all the athletes. And I think there's plenty of brands out there that are good at what they do, even if it's a service-based brand. I've had some folks reached out that they don't have a tangible product. It is a service. That's fine. Same thing applies to them. It's influencer marketing is the hottest thing right now, and I don't think it's going anywhere as long as these influencers continue to better their craft, and then brands like Polar understand how to make it very clear what I'd like to see in return for this unit. Hey, put it on your handlebars, man. Where was the watch in that last gym post? Whatever it is. Why is there a black wrist strap on that thing? I need it to be green. I need it to pop. Like little things like the collar, making sure that it stands out. It's a big deal, man. Yeah, you're a rock star. I think I hope Polar understands what you've done, even though Moto is not the largest industry you guys play ball in. I hope Polar sees, like, man, you've made some pretty significant headway in a relatively short amount of time, and I don't think it's going to slow down.
Well, this is all possible because of the quality of the product. I always have to thank Polar, for allowing me to play and give me a long leash to explore other sports and then really grasp onto this one. And we're actually doing a demo next weekend. Polar is going to be in Atlanta for the marathon, which is also the Olympic trials. Top 3 go to Tokyo. And that's also Supercross weekend. So we're demoing our multiple heart rate product, Team Pro, with Feld. I was on a call with Feld and NBC Sports. Really cool. I mean, pretty intense to be like on a call with the TV crew, because I'm fanboy. Now I'm like, I got to deliver something with my coworker.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be on TV in Atlanta. That was clearly stated with Michael. But hopefully we have enough riders Friday. I guess that's like media day or whatever they call it. With some of the riders ride the track. That's how green I am, Luke.
Yeah, you're good. Media day.
Media day, thank you. Thanks to Mike Mewey at Feld. He gave me the lineup because I know it varies. And luckily for us, it's Husky, KTM, Rockstar Husky. So we have Alvin's guys.
Right.
Chad, I think, might be riding. And I just emailed Justin Brayton, not to name drop, but so we're going to do some quick demoing on Friday so they can see multiple heart rates. And then maybe on Saturday, before some mains and heats and LCQs, you might see those at the Mercedes-Benz Georgia Dome live before the gate drops. So there's going to be a lot for Feld to see an indoor alternative to what they use outdoor with LitPro, which is a great product, and we work really well with them. So you might see something really unique if you're at the stadium, and if you do, take a picture and post it and tag it at Polar Global. And don't forget Moto X for 20% off at Polar USA. How's that?
That's awesome, man. You got this down. See, it's not your first rodeo.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, drop your social handles really quick before we let you go. Where can we follow you on Instagram or any of the other channels you guys are on? And then what's if we want to go buy one of these, what's the best place to find you online? At Polar Global, there's specific tags for specific watches. I won't go into that. But, we have a YouTube channel, polar.com. We have some nice blogging, training for the riders. So, you could train like a runner, like Roxon does. He's like one of the few riders who runs a lot, and that gets your heart rate up pretty high. We know they reach about 90%. And online, you could buy direct at polar.com with the code, or we work really hard with Amazon and our pricing structure. So either or, you can go there or shop direct. Solid. Well, we appreciate you, man. I enjoyed the conversation and looking forward to continuing that in the future.
Hey, Luke, thanks for having me on. And again, it's a great sport, and it's when I go to the races, and a lot of things and barely. We see a lot of casts, and we hope the best with Brian Moreau and his accident. Hopefully, he's as lucky as Ryan Newman was with the 500. So Thanks for having me on. It's really been cool.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Moto Marketing Podcast. If your goal is to get real, measurable results from your marketing that will grow your company revenue, then check out how Impakt Media can get the same results that they have for Moto's most iconic brands by visiting thinkimpakt.com. That's THINKIMPAKT.com. Have a marketing question that you want answered on the show? Send your questions to questions@motomarketingpodcast.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast.